Welcome to session 6 of Shift. We're going to be starting today on lesson 6 and on slide 12. So, coming in from last week, the internet and real estate. Buyers on the internet, we know that this has changed the way that buyers look at real estate, how they consider what their price range is, what their location might be, what looks interesting to them. They immediately go to the internet. 15 years ago was absolutely not the case. That was strictly done by a buyer's agent who would perhaps meet someone at an open house and then continue on with the business as they show them what the listings are and what kind of possibilities for the price range and area that the buyer is looking for. But now what we find is that buyers will start very early in their timeline, probably before they're actually ready to get started with the actual buying process. And they start browsing. They analyze and research the markets. They start reading what's out there on the web about the market in that particular micro area and see whether it's a good time to buy a house. It's a huge investment. People are hesitant, while at the same time they're pressured because of life situations, starting a relationship, getting married, having children, melding families. All of these are the kinds of things that happen and put someone in a more urgent frame of mind when it comes to buying real estate. So the place they begin now, almost 100% of the time, is by browsing the internet. They are very prepared when they are ready. By the time they come to a conclusion about, yes, it is the right time to buy, and they've browsed the internet and seen some things that they're interested in and they believe they can afford, then they tend to move quickly from website to website and figure out how they're going to make it happen. Searching online instead of driving to open houses is massively more effective, although an agent will guide them that looking at something on the internet and seeing the neighborhood and the house live are two very different things. Just recently, a member of my family purchased a house along with me down in Fort Worth, Texas. And Fort Worth is an interesting market, and in the process of preparing for that, we took a look at all kinds of different property. They picked out an area that they were interested in. And then even though they had done a lot of shopping online, they secured an agent, obviously Keller Williams, and then began looking for the property in earnest by visiting the different locations. And some of the first things that they found out that were very interesting, one is that the pictures and the reality of the property oftentimes have a separation point. They may look better or worse in person than they did in the pictures. So that's something to take into consideration. The second thing is, I told them that Friday night, Saturday night, drive by, see what the neighborhood's like at night. Is it noisy? Is it quiet? What kinds of things are going on in the neighborhood, and to pay attention to those. And those are also the kinds of things that you can't get from an internet search. So you have to move at some point from the internet side to the actual buying side of what it takes optimally to make a huge selection of the biggest expense of your life probably, which is the house you're going to live in. So we want to understand the home buying process. People who can find the house on the internet don't necessarily know what all is involved with buying the house that they found. And they want agents to know their stuff and provide real value. Agency is important. There are people out there who feel confident about spending $1 million that they have to borrow to get and not have any guidance from someone who's a professional. Those are rather rare. Most of the times when people who are inexperienced with making those kind of purchases get around to making those purchases, it's something they want somebody who's actually done it before and understands all the ins and outs and how to best represent them from a fiduciary standpoint. And they really want agents that are informed. They don't want somebody fumbling around about details and not sure about the neighborhood or the taxes or the school system, what the construction parameters might be for industrial, maybe in the near area, what's going on in high tech or whatever other industry is dominant in your particular area. How that affects home values and home purchases is very closely linked. So these are all things that get us from the beginning, which is the internet search, down through the point at which an intelligent, informed, and aggressive agent becomes their representative, and the buying process goes forward. So using technology, one of the things that Keller Williams has that many other real estate brokerages would like to have but don't is tremendous technology in the form of Command. It's our CRM tool. It is not only a database and a way to keep track and automate touches to your database, but also to create marketing and sellers listings very quickly, very professionally for very low cost. In addition to that, for between 50 and 60 cents an ad, you can buy Facebook ads because of the collaboration in the $1 billion development between Keller Williams, Google, and Facebook. You can buy ads on Facebook for pennies on the dollar and maximize your exposure and your ability to get in and get exposure and sell the home. Other things that people use for technology in real estate is social media. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn are all used. LinkedIn is frequently used to keep track of agents or brokers who are publishing things about the market in your area or the market in general, or about the various developments in financing that might impact potential buyers. IM is very important. It's a way to communicate quickly in short bursts, and it has a huge part in real estate, especially when you're responding to a prospective agent and trying to keep that response time between the client's initial inquiries and the response down to as close to zero as you possibly can. Automated campaigns are important, primarily because by the time you get 2, 3, maybe even up to 10,000 contacts in your database inside of Command, trying to remember who you contacted last and what category they're in and how you want to contact them next in order to be able to stay in touch and be on the top of their mind when the person is ready to make a buy or sell decision. Automation is the only way to go. It just can't be done effectively manually. And that's why a tool like Command with $1 billion investment on the part of Keller Williams is such an invaluable tool to the next generation and current generation sales agent. Okay, websites. There are 2 reasons for a website. One, online presence hub for your business, and the other is an electronic office. So it's important to have a presence that people can go to. It's a place you can show homes. You can do this very much online with your own website. You can do this through Facebook. There are lots of ways to do it, but the idea is that you want to be able to get your message out there to as many people as are absolutely possible. And to do this, the web is a very effective way to disseminate reasonably small bits of information massively across a very wide, diverse audience. Electronic offices, which the most important of which for us at this point is Command, keep track of your transactions, where you are in the lead development process, and how you're going to touch them next when it comes to the next step of business are all very important as part of a reason you want to use automation in a website to produce it. So with that in mind, let's shift gears onto what KW terms the 4 C's. The 4 C's are capture the interest of people, connect with them on a personal level, cultivate the relationship over time, and close for an appointment. The idea is that once all of this is done, you can end up with a lifetime client, one who comes back to you for multiple purchases, be they next step homes as their careers and lives develop, or they come back looking for investments and want somebody to represent them who they were very familiar with and enjoyed working with in the past. So it's all very important to build these 4 things together so that you have a return client. In my role within Keller Williams as the CEO and team lead, very often I speak with a lot of high-end agents from all kinds of different brokerages who are in the process of making this work and have proven that they can do so very effectively. And one common thing that ties them together is that there comes a point when their business is $50, $60, $70 million gross a year, they aren't having to do a lot more public marketing in the way you would do cold marketing on people you don't know. They tend to rely heavily on maybe up to a 10,000 name database of clients and customers that they have worked with before. And you're looking at repeat business and referral business from that group that has worked with you before that constitutes nearly 100% of their business. So getting this right early in your real estate career and then carrying it forward into the advanced stages is very important for the development of your business. So to start, let's talk about funnels. If we arrange these 4 C's, capture, connect, cultivate, and convert, into an inverted triangle, and then we set it next to the agent's time spent with consumers at the various stages, and then the agent's ability to leverage automation, you start to see 3 inversely proportionate type relationships. The 4 stages work inversely with the amount of time that the agent has to invest in each of those steps. So when you start capturing the initial contact, there's very little time of the agent involved with that personally. It's something that happens. You have various methods that you use to put yourself out there to capture that first contact and get going. But as you move down from capture to connect, after you've connected with the individual, you start cultivating them as a potential client and then convert them into a seller or a buyer. The amount of time that the agent spends with each client goes up as you progress down that list. And that's what the 2 inverted triangles are trying to represent. Then the third one is the agent's ability to leverage automation at various stages. So clearly at the capture, where it's a short touch, but you need to do thousands of these short touches, you can leverage automation and technology to massive success by using the power of the database and of mailers and of drip campaigns within CRMs like Command. And you can do a fantastic amount of wide distribution, very shallow, and get that first capture. You can begin this process of moving toward converting them into a client. But as time goes on and you move down from capture to connect to cultivate, there's also naturally the inability to automate the personal side of what you're supplying. So that's where, remember that the reason people have agents is they want a personal relationship with the person who's going to guide them, advise them, and help them to execute on that biggest purchase they're going to make in their lives, the selection of their home. Make offer for immediate response. This is part of the capture mentality, so that you want to basically present to the potential client an offer that they need to act on immediately. Not spend a lot of time thinking or scheduling it out 3 weeks from now, but trying to capture it right up front. Make an offer for immediate response. The best buy on a list, instant notification of homes for sale, find out what your home is worth, see about a property, virtual tours, prices, etc., automated guidance, foreclosure, distress, free reports, etc. These are all about strategic thinking. It's a party's perspective on whether or not you're going to play hardball or you're going to play softball. So softball is kind of where you're a little less pressury, a little less engaged in intensity, and see if you can capture somebody who would be interested in progressing through the 4 C's with you. The other way to think of it as hardball. Hardball is getting out there and finding someone based on making them an offer that needs an immediate response. And these are some of the ways you can do that to help encourage potential buyers to make an immediate response and get you started on the capture route. Capture with filters. Registration is very good. And there's something they called skinny bait and fat bait. Skinny bait is no registration required. This means that it's out there, nobody's really committing to anything other than being anonymous and looking at whatever it is you've got that you're presenting, trying to start the capture process. Fat bait is something where you're gathering information that you can take the next step on. So that's where a registration is required. And what do you want in a registration? You want a name, you want an email address, you want a phone number, and the ability to reach out and contact that person with whatever other pertinent information you can gather. This is really important. It's something that has to be done. The more fat bait you can put out there, where you get registration and names in the capture, that will allow you to follow up and have a much, much higher conversion rate. I've included some notes here that you can read on your own that came out of the course on the page 22 to 23. And I just dropped them in here for your convenience so that you can look through them to see ideas about what makes fat bait work and what some of the possibilities are. So, as I said, minimum thing you need is name, email, and phone number. Optional things are location, whether they're a buyer or seller, and a whole giant list more. What's motivating them, what stage of life, what are their goals, what particular job or retirement is driving their decision. The more you know about the client, the more you can capture, the better. And this just does nothing but raise the possibilities of how you're going to and how effectively you're going to convert these into actual business. So if you're doing captures, you need a notification of a capture, a voice message to a phone, a text message to a phone, or email. Now on this one, I put an orange on this slide as a commentary on it, that one of the most important things you have to be able to provide is speed. Speed of response is quintessential to winning the capture. So if you turn your phones off, if you don't check email on weekends or after hours, there's a good possibility that your potential client will go out and email you, but they may also email 2 or 3 other agents. And if one of the other agent gets back to them first, guess what? The highest probability is that they will take the person who was responsive over waiting to see all of the responses and then make a selection. Bottom line is speed wins. So you want to be quick and you want to be available. So now you start hitting a balance with your life. What are you going to do between having to be available 7 by 24 by 365? How do you balance that against the other life lessons? Like, how am I going to have free time? How am I going to ever have a personal life? There's a lot of strategies to do that, and there are more than ever right now that you can employ. One of the best is pick times at specific sequences and durations to check email. So even on the weekend or holidays, every hour, every 2 hours, you check to see if there have been any responses, especially when you're in the process of fishing for a client and you're at the capture stage. So doing that will do nothing but help you keep those response times to a minimum. It may be if it comes in the form of IM, every time that IM dings, you have to get it out, you have to take a look at it. Those are all very important if you're going to advance quickly into the next stage, and it's all about the speed. So let's stop for a minute, and I want you to think about your capture system. So spend a few minutes thinking about this, pause this video, and jot down what your current capture system looks like. The reason you write it down is because if you write it down, you can put times, conditions, and you can really think about it systematically from end to end. It's very important. What offers do you make? Do you require registration? How many inquiries in each day, week, or month? You want to keep metrics on that. One of the things that we have learned in business over the last 20 years is that data analysis and analytics based on numbers is really important to help you understand which parts of your business need to move fast and you need to be careful with, and which ones can move slower because the response and the output of what they produce is something less. So to be able to do that, you have to sit down, write it down, figure out what your capture system is. Then you can unpause this tape and go on to the next step. The next one is to connect. Keys to connecting: respond as quickly as possible and provide real value. Value is what connecting is all about. You have to be able to demonstrate very clearly why you as an agent, number one, are necessary to their success in selecting and either buying or selling a home. The second thing you want to do is also provide a real value. What is it that you do? What can you show them that actually, in dollars and cents, is a reason to select you and not someone else? Well, there's a number of things you can do. You can look at the home sales that you've made in relation to home sales from other brokerages. Who generates the most profit? Remember that any discussion of value with a potential buyer or seller has to do with not necessarily, particularly with the seller, not what the lowest cost is, but what the highest profit is when you're done. So a good example of that was recently brought up in a class on maximizing your commission, taught by our own Yvette Peterson of the Peterson Real Estate Group, is that you want to be able to show them that, hey, I was involved with this, I demonstrated this much value, and this is how much more profit it produced. So there was a good example given about what do you do with someone who's getting ready to retire? They've lived in the same home for 28 years, they've raised X number of children there, and they keep the place nice, but you have a tendency to accumulate stuff over that much time. And they are not young anymore. It's going to be very hard for them to prepare a house for sale. How do you add value there? Well, in the case of some of our agents, and in the case of Yvette, she talked all about, this is how I come in, and this is the percent I charge, and this is what you get for it. And part of it is, I oversee how we clean out and declutter and get you ready so that you can actually move without you having to figure out how you're going to do that over 6 months and exhaust yourself in the process. Those are real value statements. If I even myself thought about moving right now, having lived in my current home for 21 years, going on 22, one of the most daunting things would be, how am I going to clean it out by myself and get ready to move somewhere else? It would be a monumental task. I've raised a family there. We have all kinds of memories and collections and stuff that has accumulated over the years, and that's not an easy thing to do. So when you're connecting, remember that adding value is really important. So it's the value and it's the speed. We now know it's those two things together. You have to get back to them, stay in touch with them, minimum lag times. Remember that the average person's attention span these days is less than a second. So if it's taking you 3.5 hours to respond, you've probably lost their attention. You have to respond quicker because that's just the way technology has trained our brains to work these days. Okay, so the purpose for connecting, what you're trying to actually accomplish, is to evaluate their motivation and readiness to make a change. That's really important because it's going to take a lot of time to get from the connection stage through to the conversion. And you want to make sure that they're actually ready to go. Are they motivated? And do they have in mind that this is something that needs to be done urgently? So a little bit earlier, I mentioned a transaction we just completed amongst the family in Fort Worth, Texas. And the motivation for the seller of the home we selected was that they were retiring and wanted to live in Austin, closer to their family. So in order to be able to do that, they needed to sell their house because they wanted the equity out of the house to be able to transfer over into the new home that they were buying closer to their adult children and their families. So the motivation was very clear of what they wanted to do. Identifying that motivation, whether you're trying to list the home or you're trying to represent a buyer, is very important to how you're going to approach the deal. So the purpose of connecting is to identify the motivation and readiness of the buyer or the seller. Are they ready to go? And if they are, that's where you really have to pour it on and give them the time, attention, and value to bring it to conclusion. Another thing you can do for the purpose of connection is set an appointment. So when do you set an appointment? A week from next Friday? No, probably not a good idea. One of the things I've learned in sales, and I come from a high-tech background, sales was not the majority of my career, but what I've learned very, very keenly is that making the appointment today or tomorrow is the right answer. If you ask somebody, would you like to get together and talk about it? How about today at 4 o'clock? Or if that doesn't work for you, how about tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.? Those are the kinds of suggestions you make so that you shorten the time and keep an urgency going in completing the connection stage. Also provide a custom answer if you need it. Purpose for connecting can be, you came up with an idea of how to solve a problem that's in their mind as very important, be they buyer or seller, and you're going to provide them with a custom answer of how to make that work. I know of one local real estate group who specializes in relocations when people retire out of the greater Bay Area, most of them out of high tech or aerospace from back in the day. And they're moving to other states for lower cost of living, lower taxes, etc. Okay, well, that part's fairly easy. But what they do is they add continuous value to that by saying, okay, we not only help you sell your home and get the highest possible price, but we find you the home with our associate realtors in the other cities, and we help you figure out how to reinvest the money that you have that's extra equity beyond what you need to buy the less expensive house in another place, and that generates an income that doubles or triples the amount of cash flow you're going to have when you retire. So that's a whole package end to end, and it's excellent to be able to provide that kind of a custom answer to someone who falls into that category of wanting to sell out of one area, move into another area, and reinvest in real estate to generate rental income. Fantastic. All of those are steps that are knowable, that don't require a single person to do it, but if you can find it in the same group and they've got a lot of experience with you and can help with pitfalls and things that can go wrong and how to select those places and neighborhoods for choosing rental properties, it's awesome. It's great having someone who's already been there. Okay, so in addition to that, building relationships is really important. Relationships can be built any number of ways. The best way, of course, is usually defined as face-to-face, and then some sort of video, and then auditory discussions, and if not that, then texting, and if not that, then email. So there's a hierarchy of what works best to what works least. That hierarchy has existed forever and a day, especially about the importance of face-to-face conversation. But there are some disruptors, things that technology has done that we never really thought about. And one of them, pointed out again by one of the super agents, Yvette, in our office, talked about how she uses Facebook and how relationships formed on Facebook, even though maybe face-to-face time, you met somebody at a social engagement, you became Facebook friends, you begin reading their postings, they begin reading your postings, and within the course of a year or two, they feel like they really know you, even though they may have actually only met you face-to-face. That's a phenomenon we've never seen in any other media before. It's two-way communication, it's long-term, and it builds a relationship upon which people are willing to act. And that's the part that's important as you connect to people and try to move to the point where you can convert them into actual clients. Also, move buyers to pre-approval. That's house stakes these days. When you get ready to sell a home, the old way used to be, back when I bought my first home, you'd go find a realtor and they would drive you around for half a day or a day, and you'd look at all kinds of houses up front, and a range from everything from below what you can afford, probably to above what you can afford. And you might get really excited about the ones that are above what you can afford. You find just the right one. But after spending all that time with the agent, you then find out that you can't qualify for sufficient amount of loan in order to be able to own that house. And now you're out looking again. That's all great. It's highly personal, but it's also very time consuming for the agent trying to do enough numbers to be able to continually grow their business. So in order to be able to do that, table stakes is you got to get pre-approved. We're going to see what you can come up with on your own. And then we go from there. We'll know what price category to look at. We'll know if there's any issues with credit that would preclude a loan. It's also a time to vet out who the decision makers are in the transaction. So many times in the case of extended families, which is more and more the case in the Bay Area, where grandparents, parents, siblings, uncles, cousins may all come into the transaction and be part of the funding picture that creates the successful transaction. It's important to identify those individuals and get them into the decision process early on so that you know exactly who has to agree in order to make the decision to buy. So pre-approval and identification of funding sources, particularly familial sources, is really important. Understand what the relationship is, understand who the decision makers are within the group, which is frequently more than one, and then be ready to go after your targets to be able to connect that person with the home of their dreams. Also, action plans for non-urgent inquiries. So what are you going to do with somebody who inquires, but they're not really on the ball today? Well, I'd like to do that. There's a high degree of probability that at some point in the future, I want to look at a place either in Prescott or Payson, Arizona. Why? Has altitude, great weather, very much like living in California. It's not the furnace like Phoenix, and it's not the high altitude freezing like you get in Flagstaff. It's at about 4,000 feet. Both of those towns would be great places to retire and live. So I'm interested in that, but I'm not ready to buy right now. So when I get in touch with an agent to start them looking, I don't want them frantically looking for everything. I want to be very clear about what I want, what the stipulations of the land and the property I want to buy. For instance, when I buy something, it has to be on its own well and have a history of at least 10 years of that well being fully active, able to support the household that lives there. That's very important to me. I want my own water. It's just part of the deal. And then you say, okay, well, Bob, what kind of a home do you want? Well, I don't really care. It can be big, be little, be 1 story, 2 stories. I'm more interested in the land and the water, and then we figure out everything else. So any agent who works with me on that buy is going to have to figure out a way to plan around the non-urgent inquiry, which is, hey, I'm interested at some point in buying something. I don't have to have it right now. In fact, I'm not even on a timetable, but I would really like to know if you run into a property with these characteristics, and then how that agent keeps that on the tip of their mind, be it through a customer requirement type application, i.e. KW command, or they do this through a calendaring system or whatever way they use it, or they just happen to remember, oh yeah, there was this guy in California and he was interested in buying something in the order of 600 acres and it had to have a great well and everything else was negotiable. So those are the kinds of things you want to have a plan for, because even though they aren't happening today, tomorrow, or next week, they are something which very easy, if the connection is made strongly, will eventually convert into business for you. Okay, contact rules. Here's some. They're more guidelines than they are actually rules. So the first one is try to get a call back within 3 to 7 minutes. The faster you move, the better. There's a lot of phone systems that are available for your business through all kinds of internet providers that make sure that when a call comes in, that you're notified and you for sure get back to who the original caller was, even if you're on the phone. Very important. If busy, call again within 5 or 10 minutes. In other words, don't stop till you've got about 3 tries. One of the rules I use when I try to contact people who have left a message or have left a voicemail, and now I need to get back to them. If I can't get back to them, never stick to just a single medium, like the telephone. Start responding to them on the phone, leave a message. On email, if you can possibly figure out what that is, get an email so that they start having a record of your responsiveness, as well as IM, so that they can see the times that you're responding back, even though they're not getting an answer. They're definitely interested, and that agent is on the ball. Be friendly and relaxed, all very important. The problem is we tend to get pretty excited when we have the possibility of a new connection, and it's easy to get tense and worried and, oh my gosh, I get back to that person. And when you finally get a hold of them, you're kind of frazzled. They can hear it in your voice. They can sense it. Try to stay relaxed, stay friendly, so that you can be inviting to the connection and the relationship you want to build. Always answer questions with questions. That vets out more information. So, Mr. Stolz, you're interested in a place in Payson, Arizona, and you want there to be a well on the property. What are you going to be doing with the well? What drives that decision? Well, no pun intended. I'm really interested in a well for a number of reasons. Some of them involved animals I'd like to have, like horses, and others involve just self-sufficiency, so that I'm not dependent upon a water system or have to be overly concerned about drought conditions in order to be able to supply water to the property. Well, Mr. Stolz, just how many horses do you intend to have? What kind of crops or hay do you want to grow? What are the total requirements for you in water? What are you thinking about? And then you can start a conversation about, well, it'd be nice to have a couple of acres of oat hay growing. It'd be nice to maybe grow an acre of alfalfa and be able to have the food grown on the property that the horse or horses are going to consume. Mr. Stolz, do you know how much water it takes in this environment to grow 1 acre worth of alfalfa? I have no idea. But if I'm a smart agent, guess what? I'm going to figure that out. And I'm going to total it up with also the idea of having oat grass growing as well, oat hay. And then I'm going to add that all up and I'm going to see if the well matches it. And if I come back as an agent to Mr. Stolz and say, Mr. Stolz, this well will support a household, but it won't support agriculture. You can't grow even an acre on what the output of this well is. Wow, now I've got an agent who is really thinking, and I'm going to bond to that agent because they're thinking beyond what I'm saying. So that's the kind of agent you want to be. Always answer questions with questions so you can vet out what the intent is. Okay, and then close for an appointment. Get that face-to-face if you can. If not, Zoom. And be sure that you close the deal with them so that they understand and they have a relationship and they can see you and watch. Remember, over 90% of what's communicated is done through body language, independent of voice at all. So they want to be able to see your expressions. They want to connect with you as a person and see if you look like you're being sincere and you care about them and they're just interested in doing that. That's how you build relationships. So, outcome. You reach the person. You introduce yourself. You thank them for visiting your website. So this is on the first connect point, and you ask them, are you finding homes on the internet? How long have you been looking? What's prompting your move? What are you looking for in a dream home? The more information you can get that way, the better. It just helps you make decisions. Other questions might include, do you have other family in the area? Are you close to any of those family members and you'd like to have close proximity? Do you have children? What kind of schooling are you planning for with the children? Are you going to go to private school? Are you planning to use the public school? And how important is the school system and the school ratings for making your selection? These are all things you add in. The more you can get, the better you'll be able to match what the person's actual needs are to what's going to actually convince them that you're the right choice and that you're going to convert this connection into business. Use an assessment form to assess motivation. So you want to walk through and figure out what the motivators are, what are the time constraints, what are the financial constraints, and what are the timing constraints. So right now, the stock market has been very volatile, especially in the areas of high tech. And if you have somebody, for instance, who works for NVIDIA, a month and a half ago, they weren't interested in buying a house. Why? It's not because they stopped being interested. They still want a house, but their stock dropped to the point where they'd have to sell 30, 40% more of it in order to get the same dollar value to buy their home. So it's just not a good time to buy. The smart thing to do is wait until it comes back up in most high-tech people's minds. So you're probably not going to be able to motivate them to buy right now, but you should watch that stock. And when that stock starts climbing again, that's when you want to reconnect and try and convert that into actual business. So you close for the appointment, try to get them signed up, either as a buyer or seller, so that connection has a point and then begins to impact positively on your business. Outcome. You don't reach them. What do you do if you don't? Well, you can leave a message, provide helpful information they can use, build a relationship. You can have a series of scripted voicemail messages. Pointers on how to negotiate their website, market research, instant notification, emails if you have their email address. These are all things to try and strengthen the connection point to that potential client. It's important that you feed back on as many, I think, media as you possibly can. One of the phenomena that we see now with everything from email, private, corporate, you have Slack, you have Twitter, you have Facebook, you have LinkedIn. All of these are different ways to approach people. And being able to spread your messaging and your connection across multiple platforms is really important because everybody tends to have their favorites. Some like Twitter and follow Twitter endlessly. Others, Facebook. Others, LinkedIn and not Facebook. Others don't like either one and would rather have you contact them in email. So you have no idea when you start out trying to build a connection which one of these it's going to be. So the point is to reach as many as you can, spread your communication out across the various medias so that you can find one that actually intersects with them and they're able to pick it up and you're able to build that relationship and make the connection. So this is a time where you're going to stop the video for a little bit and think a little bit more about it in terms of how quickly are you connecting with your inquiries. So think back and do some history searches through the medias that you use to connect and see what your response times actually are. If after the original point at which you get somebody who's trying to make contact with you and your response time is measured in days, you've probably got a problem and you need to correct it because it's going to have an adverse effect on your business. If the response time is in hours, not too bad, but it could be better. Response time is in minutes. Now you're cooking. You're taking full advantage of the possibility to connect. So after you've given that some thought, push play again and brings us to Cultivate. The purpose of cultivating is to provide continuous value, not only for the process of selection or the individual contract that's on the table, but also for the purpose of adding value after the sale. Being a resource to tradesmen that are going to come in and maybe help them remodel, help them do repairs, help them do upgrades, are important ways to continue to add value to your client after the transaction is closed. Submit the relationship with action plans. Have ways of doing this. Drop off a present after the transaction is closed as a housewarming. When you're in the process of going through holidays, Father's Day, Mother's Day, Independence Day, various things you might want to select in the normal holiday schedule during the year. And perhaps you want to do something nice, deliver some cookies, send them a gift certificate to the movies or Jamba Juice or for coffee, something that hopefully you had an idea that maybe they don't drink coffee, but they love juice. And so maybe Jamba Juice is the answer. But you want to submit these kinds of things to them to help cement the relationship by following these action plans. Maintain top of the mind status. What they mean by that is anytime they think about buying or selling real estate, you want to be the first person in the top of their mind, not the second. So many agents I hear who are extremely successful and also very experienced will turn around and tell you they're shocked from time to time when one of their former clients, which they had a great relationship and they didn't cultivate it frequently enough because suddenly they had a real estate transaction that came up. Maybe they were laid off. They need to make a move right now. And you're not the first one on their mind, and they select someone else. All of that effort comes for naught. So you want to keep doing whatever you're doing so that you stay on the top of mind for your client base in between the actual transaction points. Also increase the opportunity to convert them to an appointment. Remember, everything drives to the appointment and the appointment drives to the contract. So cultivate your system. Describe your current system. What are you doing right now? It's going to be a point where you pause again. Write it out, kind of step by step. Here's what I do to cultivate business, whether it's repeat business or new business. And what can I do in here that could actually make it better? When you've got automation like Command, you set up a drip system, it can do that for you. And you can watch for responses, if there are any, for anyone who's interested in reigniting a relationship in order to begin a new transaction. So spend some time thinking about this. It'll be very valuable. Push pause, and then when you're ready, push play. The final step is to convert. Ask for an appointment at every opportunity. Don't be shy about that. Just step right up and do it and explain the purpose of the appointment. Once you believe it's okay to ask for what you want, you will have a chance of getting it. That's a quote from Gary Keller, who started Keller Williams. And it's important. You got to be okay with asking. You got to ask. If you don't, somebody else will, and will probably be able to convert that particular client. So always look for the opportunity to convert into what you're actually looking for. Ask for what you want. During the conversion process, also, conversions come from contribution. Know your numbers. Number of inquiries, number of contacts made, number of conversions that you've done. See what your statistics actually look like. Which contributions that you're making actually make it possible to convert from a potential business deal into a real business deal. And then maximize those and go from there. To do that, you got to analyze the numbers. So again, great place to pause, think about this, write some things down, and then push play. So what are we going to do for the bottom line? Bottom line, you have to understand the needs of the buyers and sellers and make offers to them for action that are for immediate response. You want to phrase it and state it in a way that encourages them to make a decision right now, not 2 weeks from now, not next week, not 2 days from now, right now. What's going to make them move right now? And that will help build your bottom line. So understand their needs, make them offers for things they can accept and get going with. Focus your time and attention on highly motivated buyers and sellers. Remember, the more motivated they are on that triangle, the farther you are toward the bottom, down here, where you're going to spend a lot of time with them because it's directly converting into business. A lead is someone who is ready, willing, and able to buy or sell real estate right now. Remember, they have to be ready, willing, and able. So that means there's nothing that stands in the way of the transaction. And that is really important because those are the people who are going to generate this week's business. There's also no such thing as a bad inquiry, just inquiries that aren't followed up. So bottom line is, if somebody inquires something of you, get back to them. You never know which ones are going to result in business and which ones aren't. So you have to be very systematic because not every response is going to give a business out of every inquiry, But for sure, if you don't respond to an inquiry that would have generated business, then that business will never materialize. Don't capture a bunch of inquiries if you can't address them in some way. In other words, if you're going to capture the data, do something with it. One of the things I used to do in high tech was when I ran into a C-level executive who started to become super focused on massive amounts of metrics. We want you to gather these 793 metrics because I'm going to, as the chief of engineering or chief technical officer or chief operating officer, this is what I'm going to use to lead in this company. Well, I've been around the farm long enough to know that there's virtually no C-level executives who use 700 of anything to run the business. It's a very small subset of 700. So I'd make a deal with them. I'll produce any data you want to see in any analytical slicing that you prefer. But here's the deal. If my people are going to maintain and generate this data, it's only useful if you use it. And if you're not going to use it, then we're going to stop doing it until such time as you're ready to use it. And they say, okay, well, and I said, this is the deal. I'll collect 700 data points for 6 weeks. And if at the end of 6 weeks you haven't touched any of them, I stop doing them and just do the ones that you touched. That's usually an agreeable deal. They'll say, well, what if I want it later? No problem. We've already produced it. We're just not going to go to the energy to produce it every week. So this is really important. Focus on things you can take action on. If you're not taking action on data, there's no reason to collect it. Literally no reason to collect it. So be sure that the analytics that you use on the data that you do collect is worth it and something you're actually doing something about. Also, using automated systems to capture inquiries allows agents to focus more time on cultivating and converting their internet leads. Remember that you want automation when it's massive number of touches, but the touches are all small. And the closer you get to making the deal, the more and more time you want to personally invest in that client and that transaction. So nothing is different until something changes. So let's have an action plan. Don't put away this guide without developing a plan to put what you have learned into action. Nothing changes until something's different. Your notes, page 47 to 48, will guide you through a process of assessing what your strengths and your weaknesses are and how to improve them, and then write down the steps that you will take to improve your skills and complete it, share it, and commit to it. You have to take action. If you don't take action, the business doesn't grow. It doesn't change. You don't see any improvement in what you're already doing. So action is everything. Action plans are everything. And if this video is important to you, if there are things in here that it surfaces, that are areas you might be able to expand, it's definitely something that you want to be able to take forward into action and see your business actually improve. If you have a moment, write down the ahas for things you have thought about now that maybe you didn't think about before, and feel free to contact me. My contact information is rstolz@kw.com. That's rstolz@kw.com. Or you can reach me at 650-297-8888. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope this has been useful. Have a wonderful day and a successful business. Bye-bye.